and just take a look at what's going on right now in this country. We put that video together because when I thought about Brexit, I just remembered a time, I always say it's a 90s vibe, where it didn't feel like America was like this, right? Like, does anybody, when I was growing up, I never felt that white people were out to get me, or black people, we had to stay in different cliques. Like, I just remembered feeling like it was American. I had like a Disney World sort of perspective when I was growing up. The families were together. It was all about families. And I was asking myself, when I started the Brexit movement, what happened to the black family? When I was growing up, I used to watch the Huxtables, the Jeffersons, the Winslows especially. I loved Family Matters, Steve Urkel, and that was all about how important family was. And it set our goals in a different way. I wanted to be a doctor. I didn't want to be like Mike. I never had aspirations to be like LeBron James. I wanted to live like the Huxtables lived. Look at TV, thank you, right? Applaud for them, right? Look at TV now. Look at black TV now. What is a positive black TV show where the families are together? There are none. Right now we have Love and Hip Hop. People that are aspiring to make it in the hip hop industry, people that want to be rappers, people that have baby daddies. That is, they're actually, via the media, resetting our goals. The majority of people want to be like LeBron James. This is why it's very easy for the media, they understand they can control minds, to give a Beto cap to LeBron, to give a hashtag I'm with her shirt to Beyonce, and that means what? We're all supposed to do whatever they say? Culture has taken over. People aren't even thinking anymore. It's all about culture now. And it's harming us, it's hurting all of us, especially America in this moment, because you turn on CNN and they tell you that white people, you two shouldn't even be sitting together right now. He wants to kill you, according to CNN, right? Right? Exactly. That white people and black people cannot come together. Hispanic people should be afraid. Everybody should be afraid because the evil white man is out to get us. This is not the America that I grew up in. America is not a racist country. Our media is making us think it is. Why Richmond? Why are we in Virginia? I don't know, maybe because we have this wonderful governor. I hope you hear that. I hope you hear that, Ralph. I'm gonna call him Ralph because I have no respect for him. I have no respect for him whatsoever. And what I don't respect is that he thinks black people are so stupid that he couldn't dignify something with the proper response, right? So I said, unfortunately, Virginia has sort of become the nation's capital for Democrat hypocrisy. What's happening here right now, this does not wake you up to the fact that Democrats do not care about racism. Could you imagine, everyone just close your eyes and imagine if a conservative, if Donald Trump's yearbook came out, and he was pictured in a KKK hood in blackface. Could you just imagine? This man stands on the stage and he says, respectfully to black America, Donald Trump says, what do you have to lose? Right? That was a really good question. And they call him a racist. He's done. He's a racist, right? He's dead. You can't, oh my gosh, he's disrespecting you, blah, 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 because he asked you a question that we should have been asking ourselves a very long time ago. Right? Yeah. Ralph Northam has a yearbook. He's wearing a KKK hood. I don't know who was who in the picture because they were covered. You got blackface. He doesn't dignify it with a response. And this is all in the same couple of weeks that they're promoting not abortions at 9 months. This is, guys, this is Satan to me. We're now at level Satan in the Democrat Party. So I want to talk a little bit about abortion because it's something that I'm really passionate about having this discussion, and Americans need to have this discussion with one another because what we're talking about right here is crazy. I can't even believe this is an actual discussion in America. I cannot believe that Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, lit up the city to celebrate the fact that you could abort a child at 9 months because it took you 9 months to decide you didn't want the child, right? Who is harmed? It is sick. You're absolutely right. Who is harmed the most by abortion policies?
Right.
That's exactly right, right? So we have tons of white conservatives here, and I've done a lot of speaking in front of groups, and they say, how do we talk to the black community? We've been smeared as racist for so long. They're scared to even knock on our doors. They're scared to say they're Republican. They're scared to say they're conservative because they've been lied on and smeared. And I said, you want to know what would be a great topic to start with? Abortion. Start talking about abortion, because 6% of the population, black females, account for almost 40% of all of the abortions performed. That's absurd. Absolutely. Because they put the clinics in our neighborhood. They brainwash our schools. They tell us not to keep our children. And what is the result? We've had 18 million black babies aborted since 1973. For those of you that don't know, the black population growth has stagnated. Yes. We're not growing.
That's right.
Latino population is going up. The white population is going up. The black population is stagnated. And you know what that means? It means that the Democrats are looking for a new voter bloc because we're going to be irrelevant. And who's that new voter bloc? Open borders, everyone! They want open borders because they want illegals to replace black people in this country. When someone tells me to go defend illegals because of diversity, I go, are you crazy? That's like asking me to dig my own grave and then you're going to kick me inside of it. Absolutely not. Build the wall. I talked to the Latino community being wrongly conflated with illegals. Latino Americans are some of the hardest working people in this country. Disrespecting Latinos and telling them, oh, you have to be concerned because your brothers and sisters are at the border. No, they did their work. People that are in here, some of them waited 10 years and paid an insane amount of money to become legal citizens. And now you're just open the borders, let everybody else in? Here's something else you need to know. When the argument they present to you, and this is the argument they will always tell you, it's diversity. It's diversity. This is all about diversity. We should be welcoming. America is a country that's built off of the back of immigrants. Yeah, legal immigrants, okay? Yep. Legal immigrants. But I want to give you something to go back to them with. When you're talking about the fact that over 50% of all of the immigrants that come into this country are coming from the border, the Mexican border, that's not diversity. That's making America Mexico. A merit-based system, on the other hand, only 2% are coming from Africa. How about we get some Africans in on a merit-based system if you're looking for diversity? Some Africans that live in countries, and they aspire to be doctors and lawyers and to have opportunities, okay? There are tons of hardworking people all over the world. Don't tell me that we have to open our borders and let illegals in because Donald Trump is right. They are not sending us their best people. What country in their right mind would send you their best people? I mean, that's just not even smart, right? It's actually not a good policy. These are the conversations we have to start having, and these are the conversations that they don't want us to have. If you guys have read articles about me, I have been smeared as everything. I have been called anti-black. I've been called racist, I've been called a white supremacist, I've been called a Nazi, I've been called a Hitler sympathizer, I think was the most recent one. Why? What is it that I'm actually doing? I actually think I might be the most pro-black person in America right now, right? Yeah. Because I believe that blacks and Latinos and every single American in this country can do it without government handouts. They want to tell us that we should be scared of Donald Trump. There's not been a single policy. Then ask him the question, what policy has he put in place that has negatively impacted Black America? No one seems to be able to answer the question. They immediately start fumbling and they go, oh, what about the tape from 25 years ago where he said that groupies let you grab them by the plank? Are you kidding me? I love this, by the way, when Black Americans try this with me. I was at an HBCU and they asked me that. How could you support a president? I go, what's on your iPod right now? Let me hear your music. You're offended by that? I put an entire Beyonce and Jay-Z album. Beyonce has a whole album about groupies trying to go after Jay-Z. You think Beyonce is disqualified to be the president one day? Oh no, not Queen Bey, not Queen Bey. She can be president. That's what it's about. So if you understand effectively how they've been able to do this in the minority community, all in America, it starts with this. First and foremost, there are 3 verticals that they tapped into. The first one is family. If you want to destroy an entire neighborhood, all you have to do is remove the father from the home. A father is a pillar of the family. A father is the pillar. Everything starts with the father, the patriarch of the family. They instill the values. They instill respect. Okay? So when LBJ put into place, when LBJ decided his Great Society Act was going to implement welfare policies, what did they do? They started encouraging the breakdown of the family. The policies actually encourage father absence because they say to the woman, we'll give you more money if the father doesn't live in the home. So what has that led to? A 23% single motherhood rate is what we had in the 1960s ahead of this. Today we have a whopping 74% single motherhood in my community. Nobody's ever talking about that though. You can't find this on CNN. You can't find these so-called black leaders talking about that. That is the number one issue that is facing the black community, father absence. And do you want to know what's a threat to it? Radical feminism. They want women to be men and men to be women, and everyone has to be accepting, and bathroom science, nobody knows where it is. All of that is a mask to break down the families in this country. And when you say that, they say, you're not tolerant. You're right. I'm not tolerant of you trying to remove men from this society. I'm not tolerant of a stupid Gillette razor commercial, okay? And say, boys should not be boys. Yes, they should be boys. Be men. Stand up and be the pillars of this society. You guys are going to get me in a lot of trouble today. I talk about that all the time because my idol, the person that I owe all of this to, is my grandfather. You guys have probably seen my PragerU video when I talk about what he lived through. My grandfather is the ultimate man. I mean, he is the patriarch of our family. I'm still scared of my grandfather. I take my elbows off the table when I eat. Yes, my daddy. Yes, sir, you know. And just a little bit about him is he started his life on a sharecropping farm in Fayetteville, North Carolina. One of 12 brothers and sisters. His first job he had when he was 5. And this was in the segregated South. And his job was to wake up before the sun came up because in North Carolina, it would get too hot if you didn't get up before the sun. And he would lay out tobacco to dry. My grandfather, I moved into his home when I was about 11 years old, and he had a lot of values. And let me tell you something, it's so strange. My grandfather never in my entire life told me that I couldn't do something because of the color of my skin. And he's never accused people of being racist. He never said that this is a racist society. This is a man who actually lived through real racism. And now today, I go to these HBCUs and these colleges, and I have Black Lives Matter, whiny brats who haven't lived through anything. Anything at all. Telling me that they can't because society is against them. No, society convinced you can't. You need to turn off the TV. Because if Granddad could do it, if he could start his life on a sharecropping farm, and today my grandfather is retired, and he moved back down south and he purchased the sharecropping farm. He now owns it. That is the American dream. That any person who wants to work hard in this country can make something out of themselves. You have these socialists now. It should just give out. Did I read the Green New Deal right? Was there a line that said, give money to people who are unwilling to work? My cat is unwilling to work. I mean, it's just the most absurd thing in the entire world because that's what they want. They're encouraging laziness. They don't want you to make it. They want to zap everything we have, and they want to give full power to the government. That is all it is. Socialism, when somebody tells you about socialism, they are telling you to give up all of your freedom from your right to start from point A and get to point Z. From the bottom to the top. They want to take all of that away. And it is equality, because everybody suffers equally. We'll all be poor. You guys, we have so many people that are here tonight that are going to talk to you about different ideas, and that's really what TED conferences, what Blexit conferences are about. It's about starting a TED conference of sorts for Black and Latino Americans and for white Americans to come together and to not be scared to talk to one another about these issues. This first speaker that is coming out is someone that when I was going through my awakening, as I like to call it, when I was starting to realize that something didn't add up. And when Donald Trump, when he first came on the escalator, I was like, no, he's a reality TV star, not really. He doesn't have the qualifications, right? And then the next day, I woke up and magically everyone was calling him a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a bigot. Like overnight, he became all of that. But I grew up listening to hip hop music where everybody liked Trump, right? Everyone, Mar-a-Lago, sitting poolside, that was the dream. That was my awakening. I looked and I said, there's no way. You think I'm so stupid that you converted this man to a racist overnight? That was my awakening. And when I started with that, it was hard because I was a liberal. I did believe Republicans were racist. I did believe that conservatives were a bunch of rich white men who wanted to keep the black man down. And it took a lot of humility to admit I was wrong. I think a lot of people that are still on the left and don't recognize that party anymore just don't have the humility in them to admit they were wrong. You know, they've spent so much time calling their friends racists and sexists and bigots, and it's hard to then say, oh, never mind, you know, I had it wrong. But we have to invite them in, because it is hard, and it's a conversation you have to have with yourself first and foremost. And one of the very first books that I read, when I started to sort of dab into conservative principles, was Dinesh DeSouza's The Big Lie. One of the most wonderful jobs of exposing who the Democrats are. They are the party of the KKK. They are the party of the Jim Crow. The problem is that they've taken over our education system and we're actively learning American history wrong. They're revising American history. And if you don't pursue outside authors like Dinesh D'Souza, if you don't pursue these people like Dr. Thomas Sowell, you may never learn the truth. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage Dinesh D'Souza.
Like this is the improv. American stand up. Well, I'm honored to be here, and I'm delighted to be standing shoulder to shoulder with Candace on what I think is a truly historic development. The moral power of the Democratic Party comes from its virtually unanimous support on the part of racial minorities. If minorities desert the party, there is no Democratic Party. Right. It's done. So the heresy that Candace is a part of, that you're a part of, is the heresy of breaking this kind of monopoly that the Democrats claim not only on the allegiance of voters, but on truth itself. On truth itself. Now we've heard a lot since Trump about fake news. I want to say a few words about fake scholarship and fake history and fake narratives. Narratives that have been spun to camouflage the truth. Notice these activists who have been running around the South knocking down Confederate statues. And I'm going to begin right in the teeth of controversy and try to ask, what is the meaning of what they're doing? What are they trying to show by doing that? What they're really trying to show is that the crime of slavery was a crime not of the Democratic Party, but of the South. Right. That's the reason for it, because very often when they knock down a Confederate statue, it's not even Robert E. Lee. It's some Confederate soldier who was a dirt poor farmer, a laborer, drafted into a cause that he knew nothing about. He didn't own a single slave. So something else is going on, and what's going on is the fact that they're trying to hide the fact that while the secession debate was between the North and the South, the slavery debate was between a pro-slavery Democratic Party in the North and the South and an anti-slavery Republican Party. The proof of this comes directly from the mouth of Abraham Lincoln. Because when Lincoln identified what he called the 4 bad guys of slavery, the 4 leading champions of slavery in the country, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, he names them. Roger Taney, who wrote the Dred Scott decision. Now, Roger Taney was from Maryland, and yet Lincoln counts him as a Southerner. And then there's Franklin Pierce, the former president, from New Hampshire, Northern Democrat. And James Buchanan, the sitting president, from Pennsylvania, Northern Democrat. And Stephen Douglas, Lincoln's own antagonist, from Illinois, Northern Democrat. So 3 of the 4 that Lincoln thought were the pillars upholding slavery in the United States, Northern Democrats. And yet their statues are untouched. No one pulls those statues down. Typically, when I talk about the Democratic Party's role in slavery on a campus, some professor will stand up and say, Dinesh, this is typically like a professor of Romance languages at Bowdoin College. He goes, Dinesh, your talk is very simplistic. You're pointing the finger of blame in one direction, whereas in fact, there's plenty of blame to go around. Both parties are complicit. Now, it's really important when you hear stuff like this to have the equipment, to have the knowledge to crush it. Because see, while people are entitled to their own opinions, they're not entitled to their own facts.
Right.
And so this is the moment for me to say to the professor, well, you know, in 1860, the year before the Civil War, no Republican owned a slave. Now notice I'm not saying no Republican leader owned a slave. I'm actually saying no Republican in the United States owned a slave. And that means that all the slaves in the whole country, 4 million of them, were owned by Democrats. Now, this is fighting words. I mean, this kind of reminds me of the atheist who read through the Bible from cover to cover and at the end made a single note in the margin, important if true. Important if true. And that applies to my statement. It's important if true. And the beauty of it is it's a scientific statement in that it's totally refutable. All you have to do is give me the name of one Republican who owned a slave, and I would have to take it back. I would have to eat my words. But here, as I stand 2 years later since I made this statement, there's not a single valid counterexample that has surfaced. Not one. A few months ago, a guy wrote me from the University of Michigan, a demographer apparently. He goes, Dinesh, I gotcha. Ulysses S. Grant inherited a slave, a solitary slave, mind you, on his wife's side. And I'm like, that was a pretty impressive effort, but I do need to point out that at the time this happened, Ulysses S. Grant was a Democrat. He moved over to the Republican Party later. Now, this is not just about slavery. If you watch my movie Death of a Nation, there is a scene that if you knew nothing about it, you would find really incredible. And that is the senior Nazis from the different departments who are making the Nuremberg laws. These are the laws that make Jews into second-class citizens. The Nazis wanted to do 3 things. They wanted to outlaw intermarriage between Jews and other Germans. They wanted to segregate Jews into ghettos. And they wanted to confiscate Jewish property through state-sponsored segregation. The Nazis are sitting around the table in the scene from the movie, and they say, we are creating the world's first racist society, and they're very proud of it. And then one of the Nazis kind of raises his hand and he goes, actually, I studied in the United States. We are not creating the world's first racist society because the Democratic Party in America has already done that. And the Nazis are like, whoa. And the guy goes, you want to outlaw miscegenation? They already do in the Jim Crow South. You want state-sponsored segregation? They got it. And he names the Democratic Party, and for an American student, this is a little bit of a surprise because, why? Because we are not told in our textbooks that every segregation law from the 1880s to the 1950s was passed by a Democratic legislature, signed by a Democratic governor, enforced by Democratic officials, and there is no exception to this rule. The Nazis knew it, but our students don't.
Wow.
So, Segregation was, from start to finish, a Democratic Party machination. In fact, it was aimed at consolidating the Democratic hold on the South. And when you have the Democrat up against the wall, and you explain, wow, your party is not only the party of slavery, not only the party of segregation and Jim Crow, it's also the party of lynching, of racial terrorism, of founding, and then again reviving the Ku Klux Klan, of opposition to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. That opposition came mainly from the Democratic Party, and yet the Democratic Party has never admitted any of this. It's never apologized for it. It's never paid one penny in restitution for it. And when you bring all this up, the only comeback to this is, but yes, Dinesh, we all know that the parties switch sides. The big switch. The big switch.
The big lie.
And the big switch is the linchpin of all this. Why? Because it gives the Democrats a get-out-of-jail-free card. It allows to take all the evil things they did, all the torture, all the murder, and pin it on the very people who are fighting to stop them all the way. So it's a kind of a work of genius if they can pull this off. And in order to pull it off, they have to show one simple thing. And that is that the racist Democrats, the so-called Dixiecrats, became Republicans. Now, I admit, if they could actually show a wave of Dixiecrats moving to the Republican Party, they could then legitimately argue, we might have been the bad guys then, but these are the bad guys now. And the beauty of talking about these kinds of subjects today on the campus is that we're in a position to check. I mean, I am actually being surrounded as we speak by 150 left-wing historians who are all collectively trying to refute me. And all I have going for my side, well, I think it was Winston Churchill who said something like, truth is a very incontrovertible thing. You can malign it, you can deride it, you can scorn it, you can deny it, but at the end of the day, there it is. There it is. And so, these days we get to whip out our phone and type in the word Dixiecrat. We get all the people who joined the Dixiecrat Party or who voted against the Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65. That's a list of about 150 people. And in my movie, boom, I put them all up on the screen with their photos. And then we say, how many of those guys moved to the Republican Party? Let's count. In the House of Representatives, one guy. Albert Watson. In the Senate, one guy. Strom Thurmond. And all the other Dixiecrats lived and stayed and died in the Democratic Party, and there are buildings in Washington, D.C. right now named after them. So the big switch never happened. Never happened. Now, I'm coming back a little bit later to answer questions, but I want to say a word in conclusion. I've just got a limited time. I want to say just a word about what I think is really the core difference between the two parties, because part of what we have to do is spread our message, make the case. I was actually, as part of my penance for my sins against the Obama administration, I was sentenced to teach English to immigrants. And one time, a woman in my class said to me, Dinesh, you're into politics and all that. Can you tell me what's the difference between the two sides, the left and the right? How would you summarize it? And I realized I can't appeal to the American Constitution. She's never heard of it. Right. I can't talk in the normal language of conservatism. I have to actually try to put this in the most basic way possible. And so I said this. I said, basically, as I see it in America, there are two sides, two parties. There is the party of the ladder, and there is the party of the rope. What's the party of the ladder? The party of the ladder believes that America is a kind of ladder, a ladder of opportunity. The government does have a job to hold the ladder. And what that means is to protect our rights, to enforce contracts, to be non-discriminatory. So the government has the job of holding the ladder. It's our job to climb. Now, how far you get on the ladder is going to depend on you and your creativity and your hard work, and it's going to depend a little bit on luck. But at the end of the day, most of it is going to be earned achievement. You'll get someplace on the ladder and you'll be able to look down and say, I did this. I played this deck of cards that I was dealt and I was able to achieve this in life. But there's another approach, and on the first glance, it's actually more appealing. And I would call it the politics of the rope. The politics of the rope works kind of like this. Down here you have all the immigrants and minorities. And then there's a kind of a tall building. And you have a group of guys, let's call them Democrats, on top of the building. And they say, worry not, you people down there. We're going to be sending down a rope for you. And your job is really easy. You just have to hold the rope. So you can see on the first glance, it's kind of easy, right? Climbing a ladder requires climbing. Holding a rope just requires holding on. So you go, I'll go for the rope. But as you go for the rope, it suddenly begins to dawn on you, if you think about it, that you are very dependent on the people who are supposed to pull you up. In fact, if they let go, down you go. So not only do you have this dependency, but then you notice a second and even more dismaying fact. You notice that of all the other people who have gone for the rope before you, not a whole lot of them, maybe none, ever seem to get to the top. The Democrats appear to pull and then hold. They hold. And when they hold, you're kind of caught in the middle. You're in no man's land. You're too far from the ground to let go, because you might crash, and yet no one's pulling you up. You're stuck. And then it crosses your mind, maybe they like me that way. Maybe they want me stuck, because as long as I'm stuck, I'm totally dependent on them. Because in return for the meager crumbs that they're offering me, they want something that is free for me to give, but I don't have to give it. And that's my vote. And so their argument is, and the only price that you pay for becoming a person of the rope, I think at the end of the day, is not only dependency, but a certain kind of degradation of your soul. Because your achievements in life no longer depend on your efforts. You don't have that pride in saying, I did it. And I think that ultimately this is a very empowering, exhilarating message that we have to share. We've got to convince people that they should be people of the ladder, but not just preach to them. We've got to show them the ladders. We've got to show them that there are ladders, and in some cases we may even have to show them how to climb a ladder. But if we do that, then our side can't lose. The truth is on our side, and if we can combine that with a message of hope and prosperity, I think we will begin to see that day that I think Reagan, in a way, just dreamed about. A day in which all Americans are achieving the American dream. A day that Reagan called morning in America. Thank you very much.